Hello and welcome to the Joinery Business Podcast. Today on the show we have a very special guest, the CEO of Duckworks Millwork Solutions, Jacob Edmond. Jacob's been in the industry for over 15 years now and became the CEO of Duckworks back in August 2022. He describes himself as someone with a passion for creating solutions to problems and delivering innovative results. In today's episode, we get to know Jacob's perspective on the industry, what Duckworks is all about, and how it helps joinery businesses, as well as Jacob's background in millwork. Duckworks is a really fantastic company that's provided countless solutions for many businesses, and Jacob even has his own podcast where he provides his own thoughts and greater details about the industry and about millwork. If you have anything you want to ask about today's episode, be sure to jump on over to the Joinery Business Hub on Facebook. Now, without further ado, let's jump into today's episode.
Welcome to the Joinery Business Podcast. My name is Bruce, and I'll be hosting the show today. And I've invited a special guest of mine on board by the name of Jacob Edmond. Now, Jacob runs a business called Duckworks. And what I'll do is I'll ask you just to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background to begin with and what you do and what's your genius in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate you having me on. And I as you mentioned, I run a company called Duckworks, and which has really evolved out of my previous role at the company I was at before. So I spent really the last 12 years or so working in mostly in the commercial millwork field here in the U.S. And working in engineering and design. And so I originally went to school for architecture, parlayed my experience in CAD and construction into a drafting role at a millwork shop. And when I wasn't doing shop drawings, I was in the shop learning about millwork. And worked my way through a few different shops and up to being engineering manager. And most recently was vice president of engineering for a company called USA Millwork. And I spent the last 4 years there where it was an equity investment company that had acquired multiple millwork shops across the US. And so the goal being to integrate and create a nationwide manufacturing multi-site organization. And at the end there, we had integrated 5 different facilities all across the US. And my role was integrating drafting and design as a shared service. And ultimately what I learned there was, especially going through COVID, was how to integrate the drafting and design process across multiple sites, how to separate the knowledge from the person, from the shop, from the location into a set of processes so that we could onboard and train new people. So figuring out how to create a pipeline of talent, and as well as how to create processes where it's seemingly in our industry, it's impossible. Like everything we do is custom. And so we rely on people over process too often. Yeah. And then through that, though, we ultimately went completely remote, had 85 people in 22 different states here in the U.S., just in my engineering teams. And so we figured out the technology side, the process side, the training side of how to make that work, have any of my engineers output to any of 5 different shops, and really learned a lot through the process of a lot of the struggles that everybody in this industry is really having with engineering and design is how do we eliminate that from being a bottleneck? So we got to where, our goal was, hey, sales go sell. Don't constantly come and ask us, hey, if I sell this job, can you get shop drawings done in time? Or can you get engineering done in time? We want that to be secondary. We want you to sell based on production capacity and the needs of the business revenue wise. And we support it. And so that was really the task at hand. And we learned a lot through that process. And through there, we began building and staffing a team in Bolivia. And so that was really the beginning of what is now Duckworks was. With my team there, we staffed and started training architects and industrial designers out of Bolivia how to do millwork design.
So you're a real global enterprise, really, aren't you?
Yeah. That's a very quick run through of my background and kind of how Duckworks started.
So I find it fascinating, really, because as horrible as COVID was and kind of continues to be, now it's just kind of a way of life, right? We've kind of accepted it like any other virus that's in our lives right now. Out of that, you really innovated. You really found a new gear in the direction you're heading in, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it forced us to get creative, and we had to figure out very quickly. I remember it was like within a week, hey, we got to send everybody home and figure out how to keep
Yep.
working.
Yep.
And it also, for our business model at the time, being multi-site, we had our California location they were in the Bay Area. They, by regulations, were not allowed to work. And then we had some jobs get shut down. So it was very quickly, hey, try to keep as many people working as possible, keep as many jobs going as possible, move it wherever the work can get done. And, oh, by the way, send all your engineers home and figure out that. So, but through all that, I learned a lot about what allows us to do what we do today, which is helping millwork companies across the US and into Canada with talent and staffing. Everybody's really struggling today to find skilled talent. So if you're struggling to find drafters and engineers that know AutoCAD, Microvell, and whatever, CAM software you're using, know millwork, and can hit the ground running for you, that is a difficulty that everybody has. As well as capacity and being able to scale that based on your workload. And we really, really worked through those things. And then pairing with that, just the knowledge I have of, hey, trying to connect, hey, I'm trying to design for a shop that I'm not physically in. How do we do that? And that's a hard problem that we figured out some ways to do effectively.
Time's a really interesting thing, isn't it? Because you've got to, sometimes you can be ahead of the curve and it just doesn't work. I remember in the 2000s, I was working for Planet in Canada at the time, and we were doing a lot of remote support. We would go to a client, set up the machine, teach them how to use the software, and then support them remotely through GoToMeeting or something like that. And that was fine. That was great because they got the help they needed. But if we were to suggest to them at that time, I'm going to be an employee of yours that's going to draw for you remotely and supply code for your machine. Even though that was probably possible, like it was possible for us to do it, the times people just wouldn't accept it, right? So it's interesting to see the evolution of this over time, because I'll put up my hand and say very, very publicly, which I have done over the years, I've always believed that the draftspeople, the drawers, should be in the office. Now I'm on the other side of the fence now, because technology and the way that we think and the way we work has changed so dramatically. Sprinkle in a little bit of COVID and the acceleration of that. Now we're in a completely different place, aren't we? Where the acceptance of remote work is now a thing in our industry in particular, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say that I wholeheartedly agree. Like, it is easier and it is better and it is ideal to have them in the building, right? But we're in a world now where for many, many people, that's just not an option. And in that void, are you going to shut down and stop doing business, or can we find another way? And so I think that's the other thing is everybody is kind of operated within the constraints of what they know, what they have resources to solve. And times change, circumstances change, limitations change. And so this is not, because I early on, I was an engineering manager. I had a team of 12, and I worked at a company where it was the norm to outsource the shop drawings right from the sale, and engineering had nothing to do with it. And I campaigned, and I remember writing a letter saying, hey, I'm going to find a way to do this internally. I don't want you to outsource shop drawings anymore. It creates all these problems for me and my team as engineers, right? And then fast forward a few years, and I'm now telling my team of 85, hey guys, here's these people that are overseas in another office, and you play nice with them, work with them, figure out how to do this, right? I've done an about face, but it was out of necessity. And so I think that's the important thing to understand here is, do you want to be the business owner, the leader that's saying, we're never gonna change this regardless of the results? Or, hey, we're going to do whatever it takes to be successful in the business that we're in. And that may change with time and circumstances and a lot of things. And so given the new circumstances, given that I talk to owners every day who are now saying, well, they've started off by saying, hey, do you know of any engineers that I can hire? I need somebody that I hire today. Tomorrow they're releasing stuff to my shop. Well, regardless of their experience level, as I think most of your listeners know, that's not always possible. Like, I've got a lot of experience engineering with many different shops, many different types of machinery. I know probably the software that many shops are using. But if I sit down, I'm not going to be very productive day one or even week one.
No, because you've got to learn how they
there's-
do things and how they build
Right.
and get to know their system and their catalog and all that sort of fun stuff.
Yes. And so that's where the conversation is really not, can we make remote work or can we make outstaffing or outsourcing work? It's, why do we think it can't? And it's not that it can't work. It's, oh, well, usually it's, well, we don't know how our engineers do what they do, so we can't tell somebody else how to do it.
That's a good point.
That's the problem.
Yeah. And even bringing somebody new in, in those sort of situations, usually the new employee struggles as well, right? Even if they are internal.
Yes.
Comes down
and
to
so that's, and regardless of whether you're trying to outstaff or outsource or hire somebody new, the problem you need to figure out is really the same. And that's what I really learned was that before I was building my team in Bolivia at my last company, I had 80 plus engineers and we were constantly recruiting. We were constantly hiring at that scale because you constantly have people being moved or promoted or leaving or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so we had to first figure out, well, how do I hire somebody off the street? And there were kind of two different paths. And it was, okay, well, I might bring a guy from the shop floor who does have millwork experience, but he doesn't know CAD, he doesn't know software. And we created two different paths. But the problem statement was the same, is I had to be able to take somebody who doesn't know how to do this job today and create a set of processes and instructions to where in a period of time, they're self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And same thing was, okay, how do I bring people from the shop? And then another path was I can bring people that have CAD experience, architecture experience, drafting experience, but they don't know millwork. And I had to kind of take two different foundations and build them up to a complete engineer.
They're two separate challenges, really, aren't they?
Oh yeah, yeah, and those two different sources kind of solve two different problems. And so the path we took was, well, I can take a guy that's in my machining department and he knows how the output from engineering should look. And he knows what good engineering looks like, and he knows what the product is and how it goes together. And he even probably is familiar with G code and some things like that. So it's a lot easier to take that and say, I'm not going to day one teach him how to do submittals. I'm going to have him processing work orders and outputting to machines. And he's going to take something that was already started. And so we created this process of, just like we do in manufacturing, assembly line thinking, which is, most cabinet shops, nobody builds cabinets. And what I mean by that is a lot of people do different tasks that yield a cabinet, but there's not really anybody in a business that they build the whole cabinet.
Yeah.
But we still yield a cabinet. And it's similar thinking with anything else we do. And it's, how do you break down the tasks that need to happen? And so it's, you might have a saw operator and all he does all day long is operate that saw, and his job, and he gets really efficient at that because he's doing the same process and he's getting really deep in his skills and knowledge in that.
Yeah.
And then you might have a guy who does assembly and hardware, right? And it's just like that in design and engineering. And it's okay, when you scale this, eventually every task becomes too big for one person to do from start to begin to end, or it's going to take a lot longer than the project permits.
It is fascinating too, because I think we build a physical product. That's just the reality of it. So when you eventually have the CNC machine running, sometimes parts fly off the CNC machine, and sometimes somebody in the business is going to have to go back into the office and say, this part and this part either flew off, or it was damaged or scratched, or the board was no good or something. So can you run a new program with these parts? Now, that would be a skill that you'd want to have internally to be able to have speed to produce quickly, right? So like you say, you always want to have these varying skills, but moving through the process, the initial drawing for quoting purposes can be that initial run through. I always compare it to, I often see people with these Excel spreadsheets, that are really kind of weird, let's say, somehow they're coming up with a number, but it's not based on a drawing. It's not based on, you drew it and it knows exactly the square meters, the square feet, or all that sort of stuff. It's just formulaic. It's just something that, you plugged in the numbers.
Right.
The weird thing I found over the years is people trust that more than if you draw it and then it comes up with a price.
Yeah.
That's going to be pretty deadly accurate as long as everything is programmed properly, of course. But when you compare the two, they're not even close in comparison to trustworthiness. And so time consumed in the initial stages of coming up with a quote in my opinion, would be better is if we started drawing right away, using that information to generate our quotes rather than some Excel spreadsheet that may or may not be accurate. Because if you draw the cabinets, it's going to know how many square meters or how many square feet, whereas you could input something wrong in an Excel spreadsheet pretty easily. You miss a zero or two, you're in a bit of trouble. And I've seen it, in the tens of thousands. So that, I guess what I'm getting is that flow through the process could start with engineering drawing that isn't as accurate as if it would need to be when it goes to the machine. But you eventually get to that stage by going through a set of hands, right?
Yeah. And I think it's really what it boils down to is, like you mentioned with the Excel example, there's a certain comfort level that person has because they've used it, they know the results, and they trust it, right? But they trust it because they've built that trust over many, many jobs, many, many years, many, many times, right? So that doesn't happen overnight, So if a client hires us, Duckworks, to help them with submittals, they're not day one just trusting everything, and we have to go through a learning process just like a new employee does.
Yeah.
But what we do have a lot of experience with, and really what we try to help our clients with, is one. If you don't have processes and standards, we're going to help you create them because we need those to work for you. We need those to give you a result. And so really what it comes down to is mitigating unmet expectations. And the best way we can do that is clarifying up front a lot of information about how you do business, about how you manufacture, about how you draw, who makes decisions, who do we go to? And those types of things are usually what people are scared of when a business owner says, I can never outsource my drawings because I've got Tommy, who's my engineer, and I just know that I give him information and out comes something I trust. I don't know how he does that. And a lot of that is, Tommy knows that, hey, if he's got something custom, he knows to go talk to your field installer, and he knows to go talk to the guy on the shop floor, and he knows where to get the information. He doesn't necessarily have all the answers himself, but he has the ability to go get them, and he knows who to ask. And that's really what we have to extract when we start working with a client is, hey, you don't really need my people to know everything. We don't need to be able to answer every question, but we do need to know, okay, when we encounter this, who in your organization do we go to?
Yeah.
And how does your team know that we're asking the right questions to the right people and doing the right thing with that information? And so usually we're going to say, okay, you have a PM who's probably responsible for the job. That's the point of contact for scope. Hey, I see they're speccing this and I don't see that in your scope. We don't want to draw something you don't own. We're going to ask and we're going to RFI that and make sure that, hey, this gets answered and we're not just making decisions on our own. Similarly, though, that project manager might not be the one to say, hey, are we going to miter fold this? Or are we going to, butt joint it? Are we going to edge band it? Or, does this need to be French cleated or Z clipped? Or how's it going to go in the field?
Yeah.
So we just need to know who in your organization and give us access to them. We'll ask those questions. And the more jobs we do, the more that becomes like we document, we create standards, and our team begins to look just like an employee of yours would. So it's really helping our client understand that, hey, we're learning and being force multipliers. You still need that Tommy. You still need that guy, like you said, that the shop can walk in and say, hey, I need these parts remade. Yeah. That is vital for your organization. But do you really want that guy drawing elevations of boxes all day, every day when he could be feeding your shop floor? And so what we want to do is allow the Tommies to do the things that only Tommy can do as much as possible and let us take things off their plate and be a force multiplier.
Yeah, we call those high value tasks. So the more people can be doing their high value tasks, the more value they bring to the business, the more valuable the business, the more, the more things are going to flow. So yeah, really cool. The one thing that I've definitely seen over the years, and we've got, plenty of clients that are using outsourced draftspeople, some with very limited success and frustration, frustration, some that are doing really, really well with it. The one common denominator that I've seen, and it sounds like you've already figured this one out, is the person that is the remote drafts person. Actually, I'll just pause for a sec. I'm kind of curious, what's the technical name you use for this? Because in the industry that I've seen, setter out is the technical term that we would use. Do you use that term?
No, and that's something, there's some terms like that I've seen and I've heard. I find that to be more not used in the US.
Yeah.
So we use drafter engineer, which is very confusing because nobody's an engineer in this field.
And drafting is really US, architectural.
Yeah. Right. And we sort of live, especially in the commercial side, we sort of live in this limbo between architecture and engineering, and it's really neither. But that's the terms that are most common. Sometimes there'll be cut biller or cut lister or things like that.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many terms around the world that have been made up, but one thing I love is Chat GPT kind of is the leveler for everything. And if you type into Chat GPT about setter out, it's sort of a worldwide term, and then it'll also say detailer, which is another one. Anyway,
detailer, yes.
I digress a little bit there. Our successful clients that I've seen that are using outsourced draftspeople are the ones, they're always the ones that have made that person part of their team, just like they're a normal employee. We've seen some of our people actually have those draftspeople up on the screen remotely while the morning team meeting is happening, so that they're actually part of the team. It sounds to me like that's part of your success as a business, is you've made sure that the relationship is the most important thing by the sounds of it.
Yes. Yeah. And so, frankly, through my time at multiple companies and managing engineering departments, I had tried, everybody that was on the market, and I tried the outsourcing, and I had been frustrated by the results. And so when initially started was at my last company, I said, hey, I'm VP of engineering and we need to be able to scale our capacity. I want to try building our own team and see if we can do this differently. And that was really how we did it, is we integrated them with our team. So I had a drafter in Bolivia, and I assigned it to one of my supervisors, just like another remote employee.
Yeah.
And so now we still have what we call project rate, which is what you'll see with any of our competitors out there to outsource. Hey, you can send them the scope and they'll give you a price and a schedule. And that's how most people first try us, right? It's low risk. Hey, here's a project. Yeah. Either, hit a home run.
I'll send you a drawing, get back to me, tell me what it looks like.
Yeah. And we do that process differently, because we're going in with the mindset that we're building a long-term relationship. And you may need us this month and we'll give you the ability to scale. And then you might have a couple months before a big job, or we might be continuously working. Yeah. But what we've developed over the last 2 years, and the majority of our engagements now are what we call full-time. And it's where, just as you described, we have a person that is integrated and spends all their time as a part of a client's team. And so, like, our biggest client has 12 full-time that they work. Wow. Just like as you meant, every Monday there's a team meeting. They're up on Teams just like everybody else. They're working as a part of just like everybody else. They have a company email and everything. We have and with that, we've had, actually just last year, we had 5 different clients that we sent drafters on site to spend time on site with them. And it's, hey, they get to go see the shop that they're releasing stuff to or drawing for. They get to go meet the PM team. Yeah. They get to go meet their peers, their other engineers that are there in the shop. They get to see firsthand, now, like one of them, the client has veneer stitching capabilities, and they were able to go talk to the veneer manager and say, understand, hey, when I'm doing panel drawings for blueprint matched, architectural elevations, this is how we do that. We do 1 inch oversized. We like to label them this way, and they learn everything firsthand. And there is no, replacement for that at the end of the day. But as you mentioned, that they're getting integrated, and every week they're getting more familiar, they're building more experience, they're building more trust with that team. And they have more ownership over the work that they're doing, just like anybody else that would work for them. And so that's really what we've found has been the most successful model is, hey, look, if you have a consistent need, and we're going to evaluate you as a client and understand your needs, and then we're going to try to match somebody that fits what you need. If you're using microvellum, we're going to take somebody that has experience with microvellum and has experience with commercial millwork, because that's what you do. If you're a residential shop that uses another software, we're going to match somebody with those skills that's going to be successful with you.
So I'm going to shift gears here for a minute, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And go completely off topic. And I ask everybody this question. Jacob, you have one choice of one artist that you can go and see in a concert, and it's going to be the last one that you're ever going to see. Now, this person could be alive or dead, but who would you choose? Who would be your preferred artist to go and see live in concert?
Music artist, right?
Yes.
That's a tough question, but I would say I would love to go back, or maybe bring them forward, and whatever. Whichever makes more sense as possible. I would love to see like Jimi Hendrix, one of the people from the original Woodstock.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. Hendrix is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
That's a really good choice. I like that one. What do you like about Hendrix?
I think just at the time, his innovation and his guitar playing and kind of just the raw, he was as much a performer as he was a technical musician, and it was just so different at the time. His obviously his very famous guitar playing, left-handed with a right-hand guitar and that type of stuff. So that was very impactful for me early on when I was learning playing guitar.
You're drawn to innovation by the sounds of it.
Yeah. I think somebody that's unique and trying to change what they're doing.
Yeah, cool. Good choice. I like it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Duckworks. Do you where is your client base?
Predominantly US, which is where I am, but we have clients in Canada, and we are slowly, interested in exploring outside of there. We've talked to a couple companies in Australia, but largely it's been mostly in the US. And, we're just under 2 years old. And so mostly focused where I've traveled to. And a lot of our competitive advantage has been that our people are obviously English fluent. So English-speaking clients, largely, also fluent in Spanish and a few other languages, but also Bolivia, where my staff are Eastern time zone. So that's been something that has been difficult for a lot of the U.S. companies. A lot of the other options in the market are operating like 12-hour time difference than them.
Yes.
That being said, though, Australia is like the one company I told my wife that I've wanted to go there since I was a young boy. And if I had a reason to come down and sit with you, Bruce, in Australia, I would do that in a heartbeat. So we've talked to a couple of companies down there. We mostly work with commercial millwork shops, a few residential. We really specialize in microvellum and AutoCAD right now, and we're exploring expanding to some other software in the new year.
Okay, so you're open to the possibility of working with people nearer to us.
Yeah,
we have clients. We just got a new client in Ghana, of all places.
Oh, wow.
So the world is it's so accessible these days. So, but you're absolutely right. Time zones are a thing, right? If you have to get up at 3 a.m. to work with someone, that can be a problem. So cool. So
I was gonna say we've talked about, if we were to expand and move into that market, we would probably have a second shift of our people that would work the same time zones.
Yeah, we do the same. We have a Tuesday and a Wednesday late night that deals with that time zone, and sometimes an early morning start. We love it. I mean, I love working with people from all over the world because this industry is the same all over the world. Everybody thinks wherever you are, it's totally unique. And there are obviously unique things about where you are, but for the most part, when you break down a business, no matter where they are in the world in the joinery industry, it's got the same challenges. That doesn't really change. So I love what you're doing. I love the service that you're providing because it's absolutely an expanding need. And so, like you say, you predominantly work with microvellum. Project forward 3 years from now. What will Duckworks look like 3 years from now?
That's actually something we're going through internally, defining with my leadership team. But what I see it right now is I think definitely expanding outside the U.S. I think expanding more into, smaller, more residential market. So we have some clients today like that, but I would love to kind of split off and have a dedicated team for that type of work. Because that workflow is a little different than the commercial architectural millwork where you sell, win a job, then do submittals. There's a whole other workflow that's, hey, you kind of design and do some preliminary design to get the job. And from a drafting design, kind of integrating with those clients that some of the software they use can be different. So my goal is to be, agnostic of software, not just to stick with microvellum. I think but personally to be able to add value and kind of advise. So I do a good bit of, once we have clients, working with them also on a consulting basis and saying, hey, look, you're not just getting a drafter, you're getting expertise and kind of somebody to bounce ideas off of. And we want to bring, hey, look, here's how we cater a solution to you and provide advice that's not just go buy this software. It's, hey, here's the benefits and pros and cons of different solutions. So I think 3 years down the road, obviously we'll have a little bit more specific staff catered to those different verticals, and would love to be doing business with some clients down under for sure.
Well, let's see if we can make that happen. We certainly have the the connections for you. I love what you're saying about diversification, because even though we have the connections, they might not be using microvellum. So that, that can be a bit of a barrier. So you're innovative, you've got your 3-year plan in place. If you were talking to somebody in the industry right now, it doesn't matter where they are in the world, if you were talking to somebody that's skeptical or resistant to outsourcing their drawing, what would be some of the things that you would say to them about easing the concern about all of this?
Yeah, well, I would say, a couple of things. One is what is it that what is your competitive advantage for your business? Like, what is it that you're selling your customers? And I think a lot of the time we get caught up in doing things the way we're used to because we don't know any different. And so, but it's like, and this is what a lot of manufacturers struggle with is, hey, well, we offer the best quality. We make the best cabinets. We make the whatever, right? That to me in our industry is kind of a baseline, right? That there's a certain level of quality that's just expected. And to get into the discussions of being able to sell to that client, you have to have quality. Okay, so that's off the table, right? That's not a differentiator. Maybe your niche is monumental quality veneer, right? But there's a baseline just to be able to do that type of work. And that's a different customer than if you're selling to schools or doing scientific casework. Quality is not equal to what the customer is buying as different things. And so what we're trying to do ultimately, because here in the US, a lot of the discussion is, well, we're trying to bring manufacturing back home. And my real main concern is that if millwork shops here aren't making money, aren't turning a profit, they're going out of business. And this industry is going to suffer. Somebody has to do that work. And so what we're trying to do is make that possible. Like, you can't build that cabinet anywhere else. It doesn't make sense, right? And there's a certain, people are importing cabinets, but architectural millwork, the high quality stuff, made to order stuff, somebody has to build that and it has to get installed in that house. So outside of that, any of the other support type of roles that we can go and get best in class of those services, you should. If you need to build a website, you're going to go hire the best web designer. You're not going to say, well, it needs to be a web designer that has worked on my shop floor. No, you're going to go get a great web designer. Same thing if, hey, I need to go hire a CFO. And I think opening your mind to that of like, well, what is this task I'm really trying to do? And for us, what we've tried to do is say, hey, this is all we do. We breathe, bleed, drafting and design. Yeah. And so what we're bringing to you is actually, my goal is that your drafting, your design, your engineering will be better for having worked with us than without us. We want to be the experts at this and integrate truly with your process as best we can.
And I guess it's risk mitigation too, isn't it? Because if you hire an employee, because you were talking earlier about bringing somebody fresh off the street, has never done this stuff before. Oftentimes those people have some computer experience. So they're going to come to the table with a little bit of that sort of skill, and getting them into the space where they're totally able to do this is going to be difficult because they don't come from a background of building cabinets. So that knowledge isn't there. It's probably never going to be there. The other challenge is bringing someone to the factory floor where they know exactly how to build cabinets. They know all the processes in the factory. Transitioning them into the office is easier, but it's more risky because those people, plop them on a desk all day long, and within an hour and a half, they're bored, right? It's hard to transition that sort of technician, active person into the office. A few do for sure, but it's more difficult. Whereas you've got already a team of people that are proven to work in this space on a regular basis. So it's a risk mitigation. You're not going to churn through employees, because even if you have somebody in your team that doesn't work out for that client, you're going to find somebody else that does really quickly. So they don't have that, that churn through employee in the engineering department or the drafting department that most businesses do. You do churn through drafters pretty regularly if they're in-house, don't you?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the reality. Is the hard thing that we have, and that is kind of the elephant in the room in this industry, especially here in the US, which I know mostly, is that we're not offering young people a career path. Okay. And one, there's not really anybody that's creating talent, the entry-level talent. But two, even if there are, what as a company do you have to offer to them as a career path? And so most of our shops are small to medium size. And so what that means is that as you get higher in that organization, there's fewer and fewer roles available.
Yeah.
And so those people move up or out. And that's the reality if they start to begin with. But if I'm a drafter and I'm saying, oh, I see a career, what career do I see? That's just the reality, right? The other side of that coin is, like you mentioned, hey, can I pull somebody from the shop while I'm creating a new hole that needs to be filled? And would that person be more valuable spending another 5-10 years and eventually being my production manager, or starting at ground one and building on the knowledge, but he's a novice when it comes to CAD, CAM design and technical stuff. And so what I did when I was running engineering and what I do now with my clients is, hey, let's pair experts in these specific skills with your institutional knowledge and your experts on the product that you build. And how do we kind of get the best of both worlds at a cost-effective, low-risk model where, hey, if you don't have work next month, you don't have an employee that you have to let go. We'll go work for another client. But when you do, you call me and you say, hey, I need 3 more drafters tomorrow. We're able to do that a lot quicker than you can go and hire people and recruit and onboard.
So it really is also solving the recruitment issue, which is a massive, massive problem right now. Is how do we find good people to enter our business? You solve that problem in one fell swoop. Yeah. Really cool. And I love what you're doing, and I love the fact that you've focused on your clients' needs. Now we've talked a fair bit about overall your business. Is there anything that we haven't talked about today that you'd love our listeners to know about your business and what you do? Anything we've missed that you can think of?
Yeah, I also have a podcast called Verify and Field, the Millwork Podcast. So you can find us on YouTube and video, or on all the auto platforms wherever you listen to it. And so would love if you check that out and give us a listen. And I think we'll be having you on very shortly. So after people listen to this, they can go check out your interview where I get to ask you questions.
Yeah, we'll put those links. People will find those links in the notes in the podcast, so they can just click the link and go to your thing. Jacob, it's been really wonderful having you on. I really appreciate you coming into the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you making time and accommodate me. There, it's early morning, I think, and I'm getting
9.
ready for dinner.
No, it's almost 10 o'clock. It's not that early.
Oh, perfect.
It's all good. Yeah. No, I love what you're doing, and I support it 100%. And let's see what we can do in the future. I think we've got a great relationship building here. So
absolutely
great to chat with you, and thanks for coming on. Let's keep the door open for more conversations.
Absolutely. If anybody's interested in finding out more, you can shoot me a message on LinkedIn or just shoot an email, and I would love to chat and answer any questions.
Yeah. And we'll put those links in the notes below.
Awesome. Thank you,
All right,
Bruce.
Jacob, have an awesome day.
You too.
Thanks. We'll see you soon.